start talking about this. And we like to talk in stories. We don't like to talk that, hey, do you know the 6 signs of depression? No one wants to, I don't want to, but you know what? She's feeling sad and she hasn't even been coming out and she's not sleeping, she's not eating. So, oh, listen, I think she may not be feeling well. A story format is more acceptable. So I think storytelling is very important when you want to get a message out.
And Aneeta, for you, when you talk about Tapestry of the Mind, do you want to show yours?
Yeah, that's my book, Tapestry of the Mind. Thank you. To answer your question, I also wrote for the papers, and in the journalist's mind, you always ask the question, why? So that was the basis of why I did each story. I wanted to know why somebody would hurt someone else. You know, it's not so much me, but why, for example, one of the stories, Minor Issues, why would a wife hurt her husband so much and make him feel like he's less of anything? So those are the issues. The main question is why, and storytelling is my forte. So that's
I love that. As a former journalist, a journalist in absentia, I agree with you. I think the writing, whether it's non-fiction or fiction, I find that stories can be the most powerful.
They're very easy. Yeah.
And apparently fiction helps, teach empathy also. So to your point on how stories have a message. Dr. Vijay, so now I feel like all of us can come to you for advice on couples, because I want to ask you a little bit about, you've written about the new Indian marriage, in quotes, and you've written about the new Indian marriage for the last few years. What's changed? What are some of the most common issues couples come to you with? And can you expand a little bit on this?
You know, I tried to look at marriages as they were happening at the time, and I found that the younger marriages were quite different. And when I use the term marriage, I use it generically. It's not just necessarily for a legal thing, but even people living together, whatever. Not hookups, but generally people living together in a more committed relationship. And I found that one thing that was differentiating their marriages from that of their parents was they don't see it as a sacrament anymore. The old Indian marriage sees marriage as a sacrament. You're married, for better or for the worse, and you just chug along, you keep banging on year after year, hoping the spouse gets less annoying as the years go on. Doesn't always happen, but the idea of divorce was anathema. The idea of separation was anathema. Although if you look back, you will find many of your grandparents who couldn't bear each other, living, with different children, because they couldn't be in the same home. So separations were happening, only they weren't called divorce then. But the idea of actually going through a divorce was unacceptable. You were married, you stay married. This is your lot in life. But today's people look upon marriage as a relationship, and rightly so. That's the way it should be. So that's what I call the new Indian marriage, where people aren't unwilling to divorce. In fact, now they're ready to divorce at the drop of a hat. I mean, within 6 months, why 6 months? Within a month, they're already calling divorce. But maybe that's a bit extreme, and those are the outliers, I feel. But by and large, most people don't see marriage as bondage. They see it as a bond. And I think that is really the difference. Now, as far as why people seek help, it's not very different from the problems of yesterday, except that they manifest differently today. Today one of the biggest phenomena is the increase in what I used to call the silver anniversary divorce, and what is now being called the grey divorces, where older couples come seeking help because they realize they can't bear each other. For as long as the children were there and they had their duties to perform, they were fine, they did it. But now the children have gone, they're empty nesters, they don't know what to do with each other. They feel stifled by each other. So many of them come to see you to see how they can make things better. And couples who come generally fall into one of two types. One is the solution seeker, the other is the enhancement seeker. People who want to enhance their marriages, they do much better with therapy. People who are solution seekers, they want you to sit in judgment of who's right or who's wrong. You know, like you're the panchayat head, and you have to
Majority
deliver
are like that. You know, so couples, when they come to me too, it's the doc, you're taking her side.
her side or his side. And it's like, you know, then they get into, they also have the independent therapist. They say, but my therapist said, you know, his therapist doesn't agree with this. So it gets into a new level of you know, discrepancies. But the bottom line, if you really look at the fundamental issues, unfulfilled expectations. Expectations, you know, expectations which are stated, fine, we can deal with unfulfilled expectations. It's the unstated expectations that kill. You know. Nobody has any clue what's happening, but they have an expectation. The second thing is, you know, lack of intimacy, lack of connectedness, poor communication skills. This chap doesn't like me. Is that better? So, poor problem-solving skills. And one of the biggest causes nowadays of seeking help is infidelity. Because most people really don't know, they don't understand that you can be in a committed relationship, be attracted to somebody, but not necessarily act on it. That is if you want monogamy. I have no quarrel with people who are in polyamorous equations or whatever, but you can't be a poly and want to be in a monogamous relationship as well. The two are, you know, incompatible basically. So it's not a moral thing, but it's just that a marriage doesn't work if, you know, both partners are not aligned. And today infidelity, not that it's happening more, believe me, when I started working 40 years ago, you know, the kind of stuff people used to do. But they used to do it very, very discreetly, behind closed doors. There were no mobile phones, there was no social media, there was no WhatsApp, and therefore they never got caught. You know. Today, it's easy to conduct affairs because of technology, but 95% of such affairs end up being discovered because of technology.
Absolutely.
So
I had someone said that, you know, they have 2 Teslas in the house, and the husband was tracking the wife's Tesla, and he figured where it went. So, you know, it's just so easy.
I just feel like a movie is writing itself here, just listening to the two of you. But we'll come back to you. And I'm sure that you're a great guest at parties because I'm sure people come up to you and corner you and say, well, listen, I have a question for you.
well, they usually say, my friend is in an infidelity.
My friend has a checklist they're going through, which they'll come to you with shortly. So, Dr. Shefali, when we talk a little bit about, you know, the kind of folks who come to you, you've obviously written a book on depression. You want to tell us why and what are the most common things people are coming to you for?
You know, I recall, you know, you said that should we talk about why I wrote a book on why, especially titled, Why Do I Feel So Sad? Simply because I don't know anyone who hasn't felt sad. And I don't know anyone who would stand up and say that I don't know someone who's never felt sad. So my experiences with sadness, you know, not essentially personal, but maybe as early as 7 to 8 years of age when a classmate in school says that I feel sad, and then you ask her why, and it's because my mom is better than me, and I'm not as good as my mom. I've written that in my book, and I said, yeah, I'm not as good as my mom either, because I have to learn from her, and I don't know if I'll ever be as good as her, but I just have to learn and I'll get there. But for her, it was not okay, and I thought that's really strange. Why is she comparing herself to her mom? So I knew that something different about the way she's thinking, and that is where the whole root of thinking styles or cognitive therapy, as we call it. So it started right from there. In med school, I had a professor who ended his life. You know, and it was like, why? The question why, as you know, we just heard, why is one of the very important Socratic question. It gives you a lot of essential answers. And then through med school, through psychiatry training, through life, a neighbor who commits suicide, and then you overhear people saying, what a loser. She just left her son behind. He's 5 years old. Couldn't she think about him? But nobody thought about her. Nobody thought about how she was feeling. So there's just so many questions that were floating around always, and I had to do something to maybe answer them. And thankfully, in the middle of the pandemic, lockdown, that's when Jeko connected with me and said, can we do something about this? Because depression numbers were just soaring so magnanimously. So I said, let's write about it and storytelling. And, the book is a collection of 200 events or incidents from people's lives. I've just put it together in a little story format so that you understand, because we like reading and getting examples while we read. So that's how the book really came about. To really answer those questions, yes, just literally in the face, why do you feel sad? And I think when we know the answers to why this is happening, then we're in a better position to do something about it.
Even for each other. Anyone who's feeling distressed, please know that help is available. We have a listing of suicide prevention helplines and other resources on the Health Collective.
We have a whole Telemanas is a new initiative in the country, things like that. And what another thing that I've covered in the book is the concept of stigma. So there is self-stigma and then, the societal stigma. So both need to be handled. We don't just think that there are so many people. Today's society actually is not that bad. We do talk about these things, but we still stigmatize ourselves. That even though it's okay, I don't want to look weak by, that internalized self-stigma. So people aren't stigmatizing you as much as you are blaming yourself. That I am not supposed to feel like this. So, one of those dialogues I get from somebody, my patients who come is, Doc, just imagine how lowly I must be that I need to meet someone like you. And they say that with that face, like someone like you. I said, it's not that bad to see me, your life will just get better. You're luckier than most. And I also have this thing, like a lot of people who see you are in trouble because of the people in their lives. So as the statement goes, that people who go to therapy because of others in their lives who won't. But nonetheless, I have noticed, I have this feeling that, I see a lot of young kids also going to university, and I love that age because it's just the right time to catch them and mold them rightly and help them. I never let an adolescent go uncared for. Just forget the cost of therapy, the amount of time I have to spend with you. I'll just do it because there's an entire life. There's just so much a young mind can grow up to do, and right versus wrong. So destigmatizing is so important. And somewhere, we were talking about young marriages, and I think the newer generation is doing pretty well with understanding and accepting these things. So,
and maybe even knowing when to reach out for help, accessing that vocabulary.
They want to reach out all the time, so that's a good thing.
Can I bring Aneeta in? So you have a slightly different background in terms of being from Malaysia. Can you talk us through a little bit of, have you seen also this change in terms of conversations, awareness around mental health? And then I'd love to ask you about your book.
Okay. My training is as a lawyer, and as you said, it's a little different. It's similar but different. Because in Malaysia for a very long time, Section 309 of the Penal Code stigmatized, use the word stigmatized. So anyone who attempted suicide was arrested. And it just baffled me that someone is already so screwed up, they're going to take their life, and once they try and they fail, we don't help them, we arrest them. So luckily, through advocacy, through a lot of work, it has been repealed. Oh, okay. Can you hear me now? Yeah, okay. So it's been repealed, and there is less stigma. There is a lot of talk in what you're saying. There are helplines everywhere. And more people talk openly. There is a column in the paper about this by a psychiatrist, and that's how this book came along, because each story is prefaced by a quote by a psychiatrist. So I used his quote. It just organically came about. The stories came about, and then, his quote happened, and that's how this book has come about.
And you said somewhere that your readers are very uncomfortable reading your stories, and you love that.
Yeah,
Tell us
extremely uncomfortable, because I write about them. It's you'd see, there are many stories in there. There are 17 stories, and they recognize themselves, and yet it's fiction. So I'm not writing about them. I don't pick, so-and-so and say write about them. I write about normal things that happen in everyday life in Malaysia. And so I'm fortunate. And they're not only uncomfortable, they're angry with me almost for writing it and, bringing out their story. But it is not one person's story. It's so many people's stories. And that is what I love about this book, because many people have come to me and said, I'm not alone. You know, and that loneliness I take away from them, so they hold it. But again, you know, there is still that, it's not stigma or shame, it's they'll take the book and then they'll cover it. They don't want to show people that they're reading this book. But at the same time, they're very happy to read the book. So does that answer your question?
Yes, that answers my question. Did you want to come in there? Because, you know, when we talk about storytelling, a lot of what's changed is, I think, we've seen on social, like many of these conversations are democratized. A lot of information is now available, but some of the nuance is lost. So I'd love to ask you, the three of you, briefly, and then we'll open to questions.
Doc, you want to, because I
Social media and
can
mental
bring
health.
up a concept of medicalization of sadness and stigmatization of depression. So 4 important words. That every little bit of sadness should not be called depression. So that's what we call medicalization of something which is not as much of a problem. And then when we say stigmatization of depression, so we're battling both in the market today, in the universe, or the market. You know, talking of people who want to come and see us, there are just so many people who say, no, I'm depressed, I'm depressed. You know, I have a child coming and telling me, Doc, I'm in panic right now. I said, but are you like worked up? Are you, no, but I'm panicking. You're not sweaty, you're not palpitating, no, but Doc, I'm in panic right now. So you don't know the difference between, it's the spectrum which is important, because every so-called psychological illness, anxiety, depression, relationship problems, adjustment problems, this is what the DSM mentions, the Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. But we all go through all of it, but it's just the spectrum which makes a difference. So when that sadness is engulfing your life, we call it depression. So that is something we need to be very, with this social media, we have everyone coming and say, I have borderline personality. My husband is narcissistic personality. My wife is histrionic. And it's become so easy. Doc, all the 7 symptoms match. I said, I am antisocial personality. I think I meet all those 7 criteria, but just in a different, you're a little aggressive, you're a little assertive, you put your point forward, you like things your way. It could happen in ASPD, but that doesn't make me an ASPD. So I think people have started, like there is a psychiatrist in every home sitting and diagnosing, each other. So that's not appropriate.
Yeah.
I just feel we need more legitimate information out there. And the public doesn't know what to absorb. They're just absorbing everything. Yeah. So that, I think, is becoming a little bit of a problem. We need to somewhere...
Social media kills me, okay? I mean, it kills me, but it keeps me off the streets also. In the sense that, the kind of garbage that's out there. See, today people wear their hearts. In the past, they used to wear it on their sleeves. Now they wear it on Insta, And they constantly pour out everything. And there are so many people who troll them and make them feel worse. And as a result, today, any self-centered person is a narcissist. Any person who has a couple of unstable relationships is a borderline personality. People self-diagnose, and then they have these marvelous online tests. I don't know who runs them, I don't know who rates them, but they come to you with a full diagnosis, and if you disagree, they'll find somebody who does agree with them. See, the point is there's so much of misinformation about, and it just doesn't help. It makes people, as Shefali was saying, it exaggerates, their perception of what's wrong. He's got OCD. Why? Because he likes things to be in their place, she's paranoid. What do you mean by paranoid? She gets really worked up about little things. Now, these are the definitions that are floating around. And it actually causes people to think that they have mental disorders. So much so that there was one chap who once came to me and said he wanted a sanity certificate. So I said, I can give you a you're not insane, but I can't say you're sane, because I have no clue what that means. Because he felt that he was going to get married, and so a lot of people had accused him of being a lot of things. So he wanted a sanity certificate to give to his future partner. I said, I'm sorry, I can give you a certificate that you're not mentally ill if I find you're not mentally ill, but no sanity certificate. Now that's the level of, you know, self-doubt that social media is creating in people. Social media is actually a very powerful thing. It can be used well, but look, it's open, and anybody who wants to say whatever they want can, and therefore, and they do. And I think this causes more problems than it actually helps.
Especially for people who are vulnerable, I think, going through. Do you want to add something here on social media? Okay,
no.
she's like, no. I'm going to ask one quick question, and a show of hands if you have a question. Okay, that'll be great. So one question I wanted to ask you finally from my side, is there one or two things you do for your own mental health that you could share, daily or weekly or monthly?
Well, I try not to take antidepressant medication. That helps.
Ah,
Well, and then the other rest of it, as long as you have a healthy routine, you know, you do some physical activity, and you are able to find a lot of me time.
me time is.
I think that helps.
Dr. Shefali?
I talk to my cats. I, they're
I
good
put in awe.
listeners.
I think
no,
there's
no. They absolutely listen, you know, and they don't counter question me. And they start purring, and they come and sit on my lap. No, I have cried. I mean, come on, we're all human. And when I cried, I don't know if that should gross out some people because I'm an absolute animal lover. But the cat came and licked my tears. So it's just, you know that they understand. You just have to connect with whoever you can. Of course, I have amazing friends and I have a great family. And, you know, so that, but the cat was a special angle because my cat has been acknowledged in my book too, because he sat on my lap during the writing of the book. But you've got to do something that you like, as long as, of course, it doesn't hurt someone else. And you don't, nobody has to judge you for it. You know, sometimes there's just noise on the street in Bombay. I live in central Bombay, and there's this music, you know, people are dancing on the road, and I just like leave my work and I just start doing some Zumba or something on that music. There is so much in your life to get upset and irritated and frustrated about, but I think you just have to go out dancing in the rain if it's raining. So there's going to be bad, but you just got to, I'm all about perspective. So you just change your perspective and twist it to something nice, and something good will come out of it.
Find a support system. Even if it's your cat who
Absolutely.
does not post you on social, you don't, doesn't troll you on social, that would be nice.
Absolutely. You know, cats are the best, I'm telling you. They will not counter
I think dogs
question
are
you.
better, so I will, yeah, there we go. We'll do the fight later. How about you?
I'm not a cat person. Mine is dogs. I love dogs. So, and my dog is called Laddu, is a Dachshund, and she's featured in the book. And I wrote a whole book about her. So, and there's another book about her. And any dog. I love dogs. I must have been a dog in a past life. So yeah.
I dedicated my book to my dog. Now I feel like you're winning, and now I need to write a book about my dog to
And
prove
if you
it.
don't have a dog or a cat, watch dog or cat memes on social media. Those also help.
That sounds like, yes. Okay, we have just about 15 minutes. Can we get mics to the audience? As a lady here, then we'll get one in that section. I can't really see because of the light, but maybe one here, and then I'll squint into the audience. One in the middle.
Hi everyone. I want to become a therapist like you guys, and looking at social media and everything, I have a question. Personalized AI companions and suicides due to AI companions are on the rise. But with rapid developments in the field, can AI be my companion and perhaps be my therapist?
I'll answer, doctor. Incidentally, today I got a message from one of my patients. So I actually generate a mood tracker for my clients. So they are in touch with me through the day, and I get updates about what's going on with them. So one of them asked her AI companion something about, in a therapy session, something that I said, and they said that my therapist said this and I didn't like it. So she sent me the entire transcript about how I need to learn from ChatGPT how to be a good therapist. And you know, beyond ego and beyond the vanity that I have to now argue with ChatGPT. Of course, ChatGPT is made by humans. It's not an entity in itself. But we start making it an entity. I don't know if you've seen the movie called Her. It's quite an old movie, you know, way early in its time. And the kind of reaction that it can arouse in somebody. So here, I've sent the entire transcript that it is my moral duty to read through that transcript because people believe, look, an AI is always going to be nice. I tested it out. I said, Alexa, I don't like you. And she said, hey, that's okay. We can try and get to know each other better and do something about it. How many of us react like that when someone says, hey, I don't like you? You know, we won't get into the things we say. But AI is polite and kind. They will never hit back. And as humans, because we
There have
are...
been some disturbing reports, though, recently in the news. So I don't know that they're not hitting back. I think they're also suggesting...
I think it's more about the perception.
I think they're suggesting damaging things for people to do. That was in the news last week. So.
But, you know, I tried creating an AI bot with the help of a software engineer, you know, in the United States. It was a friend. And I tried teaching the AI, but after a certain point, we call it, we usually say she. But after a certain point, the AI was using the indexed material to such an extent that I was not comfortable with. So they will give back what we teach them, but we've given them so much to index. So the negativity also tends to come out in terms of, you know, your therapist is wrong for you. That's not very
Dr.
nice.
Vijay, do you want to answer? Should AI be her therapist guide or replacement?
Sometimes AI responds to you like Dr. Phil does. You know? And sometimes, see, the thing is, when you go to therapy, it's the human contact. You know, it is the feel of that relationship, the texture of that relationship which really helps. You know? Otherwise, you can read a book, you know, get AI and get your questions answered. But it is about, you know, re-evaluating what is happening inside of you. And I would still say that a therapist, you know, at the risk of sounding, you know, I don't know, self-promoting, I would still say a therapist would probably do a far better job of that than AI. Because it's not just giving solutions to problems. It's helping you understand yourself.
Next question.
We talked about these new Indian marriages in the beginning, right? And marriage is regarded as a social institution. And in the contemporary time, it can feel rather individualistic in its taste. So my question is, when faced with internal conflict and in the social context, how do we negotiate or balance the line between giving it its due effort to maintain it as an institution versus our own individualistic impulses?
You know, the minute we stop treating it as an institution, we'll all be fine. You know? See, once we institutionalize something, it becomes rigid, unyielding, and you feel that you have to perform certain roles, you know, to function within that institution. If we think of it as a relationship of companionship, closeness and connectedness between two people, you know, then I think is where we can allow our individual selves as well as this entity that we call marriage, you know, to flourish. And it makes us better people if we are able to get it right. Problem is we are not often able to get it right. So we run into cul-de-sacs, you know, of some sort or the other. But I would personally not like it to be institutionalized. Unfortunately, you know, the legal system also plays a very active role in marriage. They call it the Hindu Marriage Act, Special Marriages Act. It's got nothing to do with marriage. It's all about divorce. Okay? So basically, it's not about how you get married, what you do in the marriage. Obviously, you can't legislate on that. But the idea is to prevent, you know, a vulnerable person in a dyadic relationship from being taken advantage of. So I get the legal part of it, but let's not just look upon it as an institution. It's a relationship that we can choose or not choose to enter. That's our call.
I'll add to it. It's also a question of respect. Self-respect, respect for another person, respect for each other, respect for the marriage. You know, if you've lost all respect for marriage, then what's the point? You know, it's...
One tiny point. I can get both. One tiny point to add. I think yesterday or just a couple of days ago, this couple absolutely not doing well with each other. You know, she's telling me she doesn't want her divorce, But whenever I talk to her, she's only telling me about 45 negative things about him in 10 minutes. And I said, but sorry, I don't get it. Do you want to separate or do you want to be with him? Because I'm a cognitive therapist. I can make you do anything that you want. Because I will twist your mind in the direction and somehow make it happen. Because I know I have the power to do that. But she's complaining about him, but she said, no, my mother and father are not going to let me get divorced. So that is where the whole concept of institution comes. But what are our friends going to think? I said, but you want to spend the next 50 years with someone who you do not love, and then again, they don't know what to say. So that is where I absolutely agree with Dr. Vijay that we cannot call it, and we should not call it an institution. If there is no love, then what is the purpose?
I don't know about you, but I'm a little worried when she said she can twist us into doing whatever she wants. Like, not giving her the mic again. I'm kidding. Okay, any more questions? Dr. Shekhar, do you want to say anything? I can pass you the mic. And
Excuse
then
me?
one more.
Thank you very much for the honor of asking. For people who don't know me, my name is Shekhar Seshadri. I'm a psychiatrist. I retired as senior professor, dean, and director of NIMHANS. I just want to align this discussion with the fact that this is a literature festival and really look at how literature and fiction can demystify and vitalize issues pertaining to mental health. Amrita, the point I wanted to make actually aligns to many things that Shefali also said when she alluded to classificatory systems. The problem is that when one believes that knowledge or scientific knowledge emanates from double-blind, placebo-controlled, crossover, randomized controlled trials is poverty of epistemology, because it misses out on the subjectivity of lived experience of people. And I have found that it is only in fiction that I have found eloquent narratives of what trauma means, not in any textbook of psychiatry or psychology. And that's where I see the importance of fiction and the kind of stuff that Vijay writes, which is not necessarily fiction, but it is about contexts that really define contemporary life, that brings to a reading public the idea of a very robust frame of reference for mental health, which then makes it easy to address the issue Shefali referred to, which is to destigmatize and to demystify and demythify the whole issue of mental health and make it available to the masses, as it were. I'm also happy that when a lawyer turns to mental health, there is hope and scope for mental health. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Say, on that note, I have a novel coming out. It's fiction. There is a mental health theme, so I did not plant that question, but you can find it.
Can I add
Yes.
to that
Yes.
one? No, can I add to what he said? Your point about stories, these stories, this is what the professor said to me. He's a professor of psychiatry, and it is he who said to me he has made a distinction between mental disease and mental health, because it was very important to him that we don't use the word disease generally. And the start of it was when he had a patient who came to him suicidal. And the issue was quite simple, because this man had financial issues. And it was a very simple issue to sort out. But because he didn't know how to talk about it, he didn't know how to manage his finances, he was suicidal. But this psychiatrist said this was not a mental disease, that he needed treatment. So he just put him in touch with what we call Central Bank, Bank Nagara. And they helped him find a way to solve his financial difficulties, and he lives. So that was a turning point for me to understand that not everything has to be a mental disease. Mental health and a disease are two important
Excuse me,
differences.
I have a question.
There's one here. One second. There's a mic up front.
Hi. So my question was directed to Dr. Shefali ma'am, but I'd love to hear all of your insights on it, which is that, ma'am, you brought up the DSM manual, right? And please correct me if I'm wrong in what I'm going to say, but from my understanding of it, a lot of the diagnosis criteria, all of that is based on trials conducted on populations that are densely male or Caucasian, and societal conditioning, particularly for different genders or different societies, play a huge part in how you shape up or respond to having these disorders from a young age. Is there a response to this from the Indian psychiatrists' field of literature? How are you responding to it, if yes?
No, honestly, the question, everything today is very universal. When we say randomized, the word randomized itself means that your representative sample is going to represent what you're assessing. So personally, 6 years I've been part of, investigator, sub-investigator on clinical trials. Do you want to add to the question or the next question?
Excuse me.
Okay. So, no, they are pretty much randomized, and we've had a lot of accomplished Indian psychiatrists also doing nationwide studies, and it is not exclusively Caucasian as we're assuming. Personally, even while I lived in the United States for 10 years and did a bunch of again, representative studies, they just wanted an Alzheimer's disease questionnaire translated into Hindi so that it could be used in Ahmedabad, in Hindi and Gujarati, and, I worked more on the Marathi one. And, simple question like, are you able to use a spoon and a fork well? Because your motor function, your function is going when you have a dementia. So, anyways, I told them that in India, people do not use a spoon and a fork to eat in the villages. So we have to change that question. So we get into that level of depth to make sure that it is representative. So I think, that's probably a myth to think that, this is not going to be functional in this population. Okay. We go into great depths of that.
Last question, because we're out of time.
Dr. Vijay, it's a gross understatement to say that your books have saved my relationship in many ways. So my question is, of late, what I've felt is our attention spans have reduced drastically. Ever since you wrote your last book, right? My attention span has reduced drastically. So as Dr. Shekhar said, even to read a book of fiction, it's become so difficult for me. To concentrate, especially because of this modern marvels like smartphones, social media, and tech. All my mind is going towards is going to the next thing. It's not, it's not wired for contemplation or reflection. So in this context, how do you think that, relationships can benefit or, from kind of your experience and expertise, or, what should we do better?
I think you've raised a very important point. First off, thank you so much for saying what you did. It moves me, and I'm deeply appreciative of your saying that. Today, because of technology, attention spans are becoming more and more limited. Today, most people don't have the patience to read a whole bloody book. They'd much rather have an executive summary, or they'd much rather have a chat bot telling them what was actually the bullet points in the book. But that said, finally, it's only through reflection. And very often when people, tell me that this is what they're going through, my recommendation to them is go through a course of Vipassana. Simply because you have no option but to think. You have to shut up. There are no gadgets. You have to focus on whatever, exercises and yoga you're being taught. But just take that time off to recalibrate. And it's very possible to recalibrate. Okay. See, if you have attention deficit disorder, that's a different issue. For that, you'll require different kinds of treatments. But if you hadn't had it, and now you're finding it difficult to concentrate, then Vipassana will always help you to recalibrate.